It's another edition of Musical Shenanigans, wherein our heroes shall battle for their right to party, say terrible things, and sometimes even give out a decent story. It's Floor 12 and it's Show 12. Sausage Obos, Frank Sinatra, Sex Dolls, Freaky Dog Eyes, get ready to praise Satan. Here's your hosts, Dave, Cory, and Scott.
This is Cory.
And this is Dave.
And this is Scott. Praise Satan.
Praise Satan.
Amen.
And we're back, pitting albums against each other this week. In round one, it will be Alicia Keys, The Diary of Alicia Keys, up against George Harrison, All Things Must Pass. And in the second round, it will be Elliott Smith with Either Or against Dusty Springfield, Dusty in Memphis. So those are our rounds. But last time I edited with a machete instead of a scalpel. Something probably sounded a little weird, and that's completely on me.
Imagine that.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. So we had some access to statistics of where you guys are, the folks that are out there listening to us. I got as far last time as telling you that most of our listeners are in the United States, which is unsurprising because, of course, we ourselves are in the United States. But there you go. But fascinatingly, if that's a word, we found out we have a lot of visitors in other countries as well. We've got listeners in France, in Germany, Brazil, the UK, and Canada. We got some listens in Puerto Rico, even Iran, the Netherlands, Poland, and India. So, gosh, we're just really astounded and humbled wherever you are. Thank you so much for listening to us. We hope you enjoy what you're hearing. If not, you can get on our Twitter and tell us at _shenanigan. But otherwise, again, just hope you're enjoying the show, and thanks so much for listening.
That's what she said.
Yes, thank you all so very much.
When the Kool-Aid man reaches orgasm.
Yes. And, oh, yeah. All right, so please tweet us.
At _shenanigan. Tweet us anytime.
At Twitter? No.
On Twitter.
At Twitter.
On Twitter.
Yes.
It's open, Sam Elliott.
Open all day, all night.
24/7, yeah.
Yes.
Because that's how Twitter is. It's one of those places.
Let's step into round one, shall we?
We shall.
All right. We have, again, Alicia Keys with Diary of Alicia Keys against George Harrison, All Things Must Pass. And we have decided by the flip of a coin that Dave will be going first with Alicia Keys.
Absolutely.
And I will be judging.
I will be back here praising Satan.
Absolutely. Miss Alicia Augello was born on January 25th, 1981 in Hell's Kitchen in New York City. Her father left when she was 2 years old. She was subsequently raised by her mother in a one-room apartment. Her mother often had to work 3 jobs to provide for the family. And living in Hell's Kitchen, which was really a rough neighborhood at the time, she had this regular exposure to violence, to drugs, to prostitution. She got sexually propositioned. It got so bad at one point she actually started carrying a homemade knife just for her protection. But she also grew up loving hip-hop music and learning classical piano. And over time, she started working on how to fuse the two together. So at age 15, as a prodigy, she graduated early as valedictorian and got a scholarship to attend Columbia University. After deciding she needed a stage name, Miss Alicia Augello almost became Miss Alicia Wilde until her manager suggested the name Keys after a dream she had. And after thinking it over, she felt that embodied her both as a performer and as a person, especially giving her piano foundation. So Alicia Keys it was, and by age 19, she had released her debut album called Songs in A Minor. She had her first #1 single, she sold over 12 million records, earned 5 Grammys. This album, a few years later, also debuted at #1, sold 600,000 copies its first week, spent 88 weeks on the Billboard Top 200. The 4 singles off this album, You Don't Know My Name, If I Ain't Got You, Diary, and Karma, all reached the top 20. 3 of them became top 10 hits. And on August 11 of just last year, it was actually certified 5 times platinum with sales of over 5 million in the US. Now, Diary of Alicia Keys is ostensibly R&B, but it doesn't sound like, say, Mary J. Blige or Erykah Badu. The very first notes of the opening track, you clearly get a sense of what you're in for. Keys' classic mix of classical music and hip-hop. In this case, on the first track, what you hear is flawless piano blended with spoken word and inviting her listeners to take a journey inside her private thoughts. On the next track, Karma, a solo violin suddenly gives way to open beats and record scratching. On Heartburn, she takes a turn toward the 70s with funk and soul and calling up the Staples singers and Sly and the Family Stone. If I Was Your Woman covers a Gladys Knight classic, blends in some sitar, then mashes the whole thing up with samples of Isaac Hayes. In a few cases, you're not even sure what you're hearing. On the track Feeling You, Feeling Me, what sounds like a fuzzy electric guitar might actually be a Rhodes electric piano pushed through a distorted amp. And honestly, while her voice is lovely, I would love to actually hear her put it on an album of instrumental works because I'd love to see what else she can come up with. Anyway, all of this got delivered by an artist who at the time was still a few months shy of her 23rd birthday. When the album came out, some critics hailed her as hip-hop's answer to Roberta Flack or Aretha Franklin. And while that was asking her to fill some very big shoes, she arguably came closer than any other musician in the last 20 years. And I yield.
I was just going to say, was that the title of that album was Songs in a Minor?
No.
No, really, that's what you said.
Songs in A minor. It was a very specific minor.
Yes.
Well, that's what I meant. How specific was it?
I did want to bring up, I sent you all the link earlier this week of when she performed Gimme Shelter.
Yeah.
With Keith Urban. Fantastic job.
See, that's why I mentioned Keith Urban.
And playing that Rhodes piano. Yes, you were clairvoyant on the whole Keith Urban thing.
I was.
More importantly, on this album, If I Ain't Got You, the drummer is Steve Jordan, who's played with the Blues Brothers. Yep. He's played on Saturday Night Live. He played Late Night with David Letterman. He's been on all the Keith Richards projects. And August 5th of this year, he was the one that was called up to sit in for a sick Charlie Watts.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And now,
I didn't actually realize that.
That's cool.
He's now going to be the drummer for the Stones.
Awesome.
Of course, I'm going to take a moment for Charlie here because I feel like we should.
Hey, no, Charlie was awesome.
He really was. And I mean, the Stones wouldn't have their sound if it wasn't for him.
Yeah.
But Steve Jordan, did play on this album. He also played with Eric Clapton, which is going to be coming around later. This album was very reminiscent of the Beyonce album.
Yes.
And yet this album came out 10 years before Beyonce. Quite honestly, I like this one better.
Alicia wanted you to lick her Skittles first.
Yes.
And I so would.
And your buddy and my pal, Kanye, is a producer on this album.
Yes.
Oh, is he?
For the song You Don't Know My Name.
Isn't that Yee?
Whatever the fuck he is.
Hey, just trying to get the name right.
Actually, it's a good question, but
I was going to bring that up when we got to the Wait, is it?
Yeah, I believe it is. Yeah, I mean, he's put it through.
No. He filed
the paperwork.
No, he filed a petition. The court still has to grant.
How long does that fucking take?
Depends on what jurisdiction you're in. In the backlog for the court.
He's rich.
He's not exactly making it to the top of the list.
No, Cory, it's funny. It's coming back to the Keys album. I mean, it's funny that you made the comparison to Beyonce because I kind of thought the same thing. That one I mentioned the one track earlier, Karma. When the intro came in for a second, I thought I was actually listening to Crazy in Love by Beyonce because they're very, very similar intros.
Interesting. And this was 10 years before
Beyonce. It was 10 years before, yeah.
Wow. What comes around goes around in music.
One little fun anecdote on this one. There's one song on the album called Diary. And in the track, Alicia sings a phone number, 489-4608. It was actually her former phone number when she lived in New York City, minus the area code. And part of the publicity for the album, if you guessed the right area code and called the number, you would get this voicemail from Alicia Keys herself. As you can imagine, people started trying every single goddamn area code in the country. And one turned out to be a retired pastor in Statesboro, Georgia, who started receiving dozens and dozens and dozens of calls every day, but refused to change his number because, goddamn it, I've had it for 14 years before this album came out, and I'm not changing it now. So poorly thought out marketing campaign, but
it's the Tommy Two-Tone bit.
Yes,
it's already been done.
Yes,
there you go.
And before that, there's an old blues song,
644-8675-309.
No,
that's the Tommy Two-Tone. That's
sorry. Yeah,
there is a much older. The Blues Brothers did it. I'll look it up, but it's not theirs.
Like I got your number or something like that.
6345789.
There you go.
That's the song. 63457.
I remember now that you say that. That does sound familiar.
Yeah. Okay. Is that all for Mrs. Keys?
That's all I had. There was not a lot that really stood out about this that made me want to dive any deeper.
Me either.
I mean, maybe for the Skittles.
I would have colored hers purple. So anyway, George Harrison, All Things Must Pass is the title of the album. It's a 3LP monstrosity. Did a lot of deep dives into this. I did some investigative journalism this week, and I really gave it my all in digging up the real meat about this album. So prepare yourselves. This album, first of all, is largely about the color orange and the number 15. It's also about George's guru. George's guru is Sai Baba Sinwawa Din Haha Von Hoagie Huffer Jr. God damn it.
I was fine till you got to Von Hoagie Huffer.
You can start that over.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to now. Fuck.
Shibby
All right, I'm not even looking at you fuckers, because if I look at you, I'm going to die. So, okay, this album is largely about the number of... this album seems to be about the color orange and the number 15. It's also about George's guru, Sai Baba Sinwaba Den Haha Van Hoagie Huffer Jr., his father having previously been the 3rd Earl of Corporafagiax-on-Thames. Of course, in the larger theme, this album is a tribute to George Harrison's unique friendship with a surprising friend. Young George was eager to put himself far and away from the Beatles, so he traveled extensively to various dens of iniquity all throughout Europe and the Middle East. However, it was in darkest Germany where he became the popper of colostomy bags and the drinker of foreign substances that he is now renowned for. Hamburg, 1975. George felt a little desperate. Stroking the ego of his guru, Sai Baba Sinwawa Den Haha Von Hoagie Huffer Jr., had become something of a chore, and even saying his name was exhausting. George took a chance on the then underground and little-known leather boy scene. Clad head to toe in leather and spikes while covered in sausage grease, George would often confront people in alleyways and bus stations while sporting a 4-foot leather codpiece, which he would rub on the backs and legs of various passers-by. It was in one of these bus stations that George had a chance encounter with none other than the original psychic oboist himself, Mr. Frank Sinatra. George and Frank, they formed an unshakable bond, and from that moment on, they would race each other through the local parks at 2 a.m. while wearing their leather outfits and braying like donkeys. They would wear their stuffed codpieces out in public and bat them together while singing about fish. This was perhaps the reason George titled the album All Things Must Pass, a metaphor about how all things must go through the colon eventually. As George put it, we mixed our marmalade, me and Frankie, we buttered our jam, we smeared our stuffing and collared our wallops. It were a magical time in me life. Frank was eventually lured away by the Las Vegas scene, but he and George will forever be remembered for their very unusual hijinks in the city of Hamburg. As Frank later wrote in his diary, George and I were like French fries on acid, and no one could smear grease like that guy. What hands! It's suspected that George had 6 fingers on his right hand, but this has not yet been confirmed. In his declining years, George was often a little coy about his time in Hamburg, but when he drank scotch, he would often wax poetic about how he and Frank had once painted the town pink. He is often quoted as saying, "If I can't have a sausage grease, let me buns be stuffed with Franks, eh?" No one knew exactly what he meant by this, and no one really even knows the source of this oft-repeated quote, but it stands as a testament to both his guru, Sai Baba Sinwaba Den Haha Von Hoagie Huffer Jr., and his commitment to the Hamburg scene, which he helped start with Frank Sinatra. George's love of French toast is further explored on side 3 of this 3-LP album. It tells the tale of George and maple syrup, and how even in the midst of his horror at Frank leaving Hamburg, he was still capable of capturing that enigmatic spirit of capricious joy. I yield.
I want you to know that even though I had the camera off and the mic off and the signal call muted so that I didn't set you off, my regular mic was still recording all the time. So there's plenty of like me busting up behind the scenes.
Thank you for not making me hear you, because that's the only way I got through that.
I think that might be the first time, in all seriousness, I think that might be the first time you went off on one of these things, but you actually kept it thematically consistent back to the album the entire time.
You're right, he did.
I tried.
Like, it wasn't just randomly talking about Keith Urban out of nowhere. And
not every track was about sandwich sex.
Well, no, it's not all about sandwich sex. I managed to work Hoagie Huffer in there.
I know.
No, yeah,
and Frank Sinatra.
And you brought Frank back.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I mean, it was a surprise to me too.
Okay, I don't know how to come back from that. Okay, actually, I do know how to come back for that. So one of the things you mentioned there, you talked about how all things must pass through the colon.
Indeed.
The funny thing is, like, you're not actually wrong, because Harrison himself in a 92 interview was talking about how long this album was and how much material he had in this album. And this is a quote: I didn't have many tunes on Beatles records, so doing an album like All Things Must Pass was like going to the bathroom and letting it all out. So you're actually spot on, according to George Harrison.
He liked his buns cuddled, you know.
He did.
These were songs, a lot of which had been shot down by Lennon and McCartney.
Right?
Yep.
This is the same guy that brought us Something, Here Comes the Sun, Taxman, and While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Here comes the sun. Yeah, we know what that means.
Was sun spelled S-O-N?
Maybe.
Was it any kind of like abbreviation for Benihana, or whatever the fuck the guy's name is?
That was
Benihana.
his guru. His guru's name was Sai Baba Sinwawa Den Haha von Hoagie Huffer Jr., who had previously been the third Earl of Corpophagiacs on Tim's. You know, come on.
Corpophagiacs.
The third Earl of Corpophagiacs, no less.
But let's keep in mind,
He gave up royalty.
I would have thought it would have been a duke.
he abdicated, yes.
Yeah, that's a guru for you. He's willing to put it all aside for more spiritual pursuits about hoagie huffing.
But also in 1970,
70? What?
McCartney put out an album.
Yeah.
Named McCartney. John Lennon and the Plastic Ono Band. Ringo Starr put out Sentimental Journey, which was a lot of quirky remakes of a lot of standards.
Well, Ringo.
This was actually George Harrison's third album. He had two other experimental albums, and one was a soundtrack before this.
Right.
And even when Lennon came out that year with the Plastic Ono Band, it was also their fourth album because it was preceded by three other experiments, whatever the hell he was doing.
I think you can classify anything by the Plastic Ono Band as pretty much like a garbage truck exploding and being captured on record.
Yeah, it was definitely, they were all kind of experimental and
It's
weird.
like,
And
Yoko, go over in that corner and scream. Okay, that's beautiful. I love it. Right. Fucking assholes.
So, Corey, I think you're kind of hitting on something, and I think it actually, I've been thinking about this, and I think it actually has to do with why this album was so long. So, first of all, let's get it out of our heads that this is some grand triple album. It's not. I kind of did this little thought exercise where, as I was listening to it, I went through and saying, okay, if I was being actually self-editing and picking the best work for the album, like how long would this actually be? And I was able to come up with enough tunes on there to definitely make one really good album. And then the other two discs are just filler. I mean, one is just openly filler because it's just nothing but jam sessions. They're good jam sessions, but there's just nothing but jam sessions. This, coming back, Corey, to what you were saying, I don't think this album happens if George Harrison is not an ex-Beatle. You know, you just had one of the biggest bands of all time announce that they were going their separate ways, and you had a huge fan base that was just hungry for any material they could get their hands on. And so the record company was not really going to turn down any of this stuff because they knew it would all sell.
No.
If these songs had been recorded by somebody who was not in the Beatles, there's no way this thing sells as many copies as it ended up selling.
no, it doesn't.
True. If this had been Wilford Brimley and Frank Sinatra, it wouldn't have worked. But George Harrison, absolutely.
Yep. And I'm not taking away from the album. I mean, there's some good material in the album. It's just not the majority of the material that's on the album.
You know, it's a kind of a complete amalgamation of all the music that had been inspired to him over the years.
Yep.
Indian influence, his folk, the time he spent with Dylan, rock, country, Motown, and even, you know, a little bit of the gospel stuff.
and Haha and Wawa.
Muhu, haha,
Von
Hoagie Huffer.
Jr.
Yeah.
Benihana, yes.
Junior.
All right, is there anything else?
The other thing I think you kind of have to talk about a little bit is how many people played on this damn album. This was,
Yes.
you know, he was working with Phil Spector, and Phil Spector, we talked about this a little bit with the, back when we talked about Pet Sounds, I think, with the Beach Boys. This wall of sound concept where they bring so many instruments in that it all just sort of blends together. Here's who we know was on this album. Eric Clapton, Ringo Starr, Klaus Voormann of Manfred Mann, Gary Wright, who was a keyboard player who had a sort of one-hit wonder with the song Dreamweaver, the entire band of Badfinger, Alan White, who would go on to become the drummer for Yes, Gary Brooker, the keyboard player from Procol Harum, so Whiter Shade of Pale, that guy, Peter Frampton, Ginger Baker, Phil Collins, of all people. And then there were rumors of like other people who were rumored to be on the album but couldn't have their names listed due to sort of like contractual limitations that they were under. So there's rumors that John Lennon is somewhere in there, that Richard Wright from Pink Floyd is somewhere in there, that the band is somewhere in there. I mean, just this lineup of personnel, it's staggering the amount of talent that went into this album.
We're going to step away for a moment here, and I'm going to deliberate on these two albums. We'll be right back.
Praise Satan!
Musical shenanigans! Do you like the music, lad?
Do you like podcasts?
Do you like expert analysis of music on podcasts?
Well, hey, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And here it is, Musical Shenanigans. Find us on your favorite podcast platform. So far, we've bribed Apple, Amazon, and iHeart, to name a few.
And we have compromising pictures of the others.
Also, find us on Twitter at M_Shenanigan, because Kanye follows us. Okay, maybe he doesn't. And it's down between Alicia Keys and George Harrison. For me, really, there's no contest here. It's George Harrison by far with this album. Alicia Keys is good. She's very talented, but it's George Harrison.
Yeah.
And this was a very good album. I know some of it was filler. Not all of it was great, but there are some standout tracks. There are some standout pieces that are, well, still played 50 years later.
And knowing what you know now about him and Frank Sinatra, how can you not love it?
How can I not love it?
Exactly.
Now that, yes.
Exactly.
Now that I know about him and
never
Frank.
eat sausage again.
Ever.
Or Benihana, for that matter.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
Okay, so this concludes round one. Anyone have any final thoughts on this?
Well, we do have a little bit of an upset because on the Rolling Stone Top 500 albums, All Things Must Pass by George Harrison came in at 368, while The Diary of Alicia Keys came in at 277, over almost 100 points higher.
Yikes.
So once again, we are diverging from Rolling Stone's rankings of these albums.
That's because of Frank Sinatra.
It's all about Frank.
It's all
It
about
is.
Frank.
It is. It all comes back to Frank, I'm telling you.
All right, that concludes round one. It's the Kanye Report. At least right now, it's still Kanye, right?
Yes, yeah, we
for
are
the
still
moment.
officially. Yeah, we're still officially the Kanye Report. I know we said last time we might have to change the name of this because Kanye has applied for a change of name, but at least for the moment, he is still Kanye, and we are still the Kanye Report, and who knows if we have to change it in the future.
It might be
but,
the
if
Ye
you guys
Report.
will, the Ye Report, the Ye Report, however the
Right.
hell you pronounce that, the Douche Report. If you have a suggestion, we may need to change it on a dime, so if you have a suggestion, let us know on Twitter at M_Shenanigan.
And you could even say the Kanye Report.
Yeah,
That's-
and I'm not like gonna go back and change him. It's gonna stay Kanye until.
Oh yeah.
It'll be
Brought
the
to you
Kanye.
by Summer's Eve.
Even if you're hearing this like late in the future, and his name's
For that
now
not
like
so fresh feeling.
yes, if he's now like Chad, some 20 years from now, and you're finding this,
Chad West.
yes, Chad West.
Sounds like a porn star. Chad West and Jeff Stryker together.
Again.
It only sounds weird because he named his actual kids North and Chicago.
And Saint and Psalm.
And say yes.
Yeah, whatever. Hey, not going to bag on the kids too much.
Oh, not their fault. They didn't choose those names.
Ye, Kanye, Ye, whatever, has stopped following Kim on Instagram.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, now he's owning up to cheating and,
I think for like Kim, that's like as big of an insult as it gets, right? She can probably deal with the infidelity
Right,
more than not being followed on Instagram.
Like, I don't care if you butt fuck someone else.
And I don't know if I mentioned this before or not, but I mean, Kanye, whatever, was always just trying to emulate Jay-Z.
True.
I didn't know he was going to go this far.
Well, that just leads into the next bit of news that Kanye and Jay-Z performed together on the VMAs last night.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go.
Did you watch?
No, I did not. I would rather gouge out my eyes with a plastic fork than watch that bullshit.
Yeah.
Maybe
I'm not a big fan of award shows, and MTV
no.
has gone so off the rails in recent years.
MTV has not been MTV in a very, very long time.
No,
it is not.
40 years of MTV, 18 years of music.
Okay. All right. So, other little bit of Kanye news we have recently. Kanye apparently trolled on Twitter by none other than Peppa Pig. Yes, you heard that correctly. That little pink animated. English? Is it English? I think it's actually an English cartoon.
I think it is.
I don't have kids, but I think that's right.
in me bum.
So anyway, Peppa Pig got a 6.5 score for a little. I guess they did like a record of children's songs.
Yeah.
She got a 6.5 rating out of Pitchfork for her children's album. Kanye's new album Donda only landed a 6.0. So it didn't take long before the official Peppa Pig Twitter account to tweet out, quote, Peppa didn't need to host listening parties at Mercedes-Benz Stadium to get that extra 0.5.
Oh, damn, that's cold.
You got trolled by a cartoon for toddlers.
The cartoon threw shade on you, Yee.
I like it. I like it.
Good job. Good job.
Yes. Oh, and by the way, the text on that tweet was accompanied by 2 emojis, a pig snout and a dropped microphone.
Oh, nice.
Even better.
Nice.
Yeah, like just in case Kanye didn't quite catch the point.
Keeping it classy as always.
Yes.
Hell yeah, that's sweet.
And finally, Kanye's getting into interior decorating. His intellectual holding company, Mascotte Holdings,
Rich Corinthian
has
leather.
Yes, from Hamburg. Registered trademark for blankets, pillowcases, towels, tapestry, shower curtains, and placemats.
Oh yeah, I want a Kanye placemat.
Yes, detailing in silk, cashmere, and fleece.
Please.
I'm trying to, what does that look like? Was it like lampshades with Kanye's face on them? Or
Yeah, why do I want to have a pillow with Kanye on it?
Well, that's a good question. But speaking of products, the last little bit of this little bit of news here just came up. This custom Lego Donda house comes complete with a Kanye figurine on the porch.
what?
Yes, August 29th, release of Donda, an ode to his mother. Now, in addition to the new tunes, Yee's childhood home is available for sale to any and all fans for a mere $500.
Is the little Kanye figurine flammable?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, if you poured
Oh,
because
he set himself on fire.
Does it come with the Marilyn Manson accessory?
It does not. It doesn't say that. It said the Lego Indiana Jones 2-level creator trained me for this when I was 10. I don't know what that means.
And there you have it, folks. The Kanye report. And now back to our program, already in progress.
Praise Satan.
All right, and we are back for round 2. With Elliott Smith, either or, up against Dusty Springfield. Dusty in Memphis.
She was a whore.
Go ahead.
And Dave will be going first again with Dusty in Memphis, and I will be handling Elliott Smith, and Scott will just do whatever the fuck he wants with our information.
Hey, I'm going to carefully deliberate on this. I'm judging.
I sit in judgment of this whore.
Say no more.
But she's dead. She can't defend herself. It's even more fun this way.
Anyway, go ahead.
So, Mary Isabel Catherine Bernadette O'Brien was always something of a tomboy. She actually picked up the nickname Dusty while playing football with boys in the street. But eventually people came to realize that Dusty could do more than just play sports with the boys, she could sing too. In 1960, she formed a folk pop trio called the Springfields, who came up with their name while literally rehearsing in a field in the springtime. After a few years, however, it was more and more clear that Dusty was really the star of the act. So she went solo, keeping the Springfield name, and eventually becoming one of the UK's most successful performers. By 1966, she was hosting her own variety show on the BBC with her trademark peroxide blonde beehive hairdo, heavy black eyeliner and eyeshadow, and always dressed in an evening gown. But make no mistake, Dusty and Mary were two different people. Dusty was a stage persona, an alter ego that was no less fictitious than the Beatles' Lonely Hearts Club Band or David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust. Mary did not share Dusty's confidence. She had profound stage fright and bouts of paranoia. She was a lesbian living at a time where being gay could instantly end your career. And even in the closet by 1968, after a string of successes, her career was starting to flag. Knowing she had to shake things up, she proposed the idea of going to Memphis, then the biggest center of rhythm and blues music outside Detroit, and cutting a record capturing the Memphis sound. Unfortunately, to say the Memphis sessions went poorly is a bit of an understatement. Dusty's old insecurities came to the front, worried that the session musicians would think she was a sham, and she was intimidated by singing in the same booth used by Wilson Pickett. Ultimately, the sessions in Memphis yielded nothing that was usable. But the record still got made. Despite the name Dusty in Memphis, however, a small parenthetical note on the liner notes provides a little slight clarification. Quote, Dusty Springfield's final vocals are recorded in New York. The first single off the album, Son of a Preacher Man, was a huge hit. It was originally written for Aretha Franklin. It reached number 10 on the US charts, and it built a lot of anticipation for the rest of the album. And when the full album finally came out, well, It flopped. Some speculate that a faulty marketing strategy sank Dusty in Memphis. In the racial climate of 1968, Atlantic Records tried to obscure the influence of African American music on the album. Though Memphis sold poorly, however, it slowly found its way to a small but influential following. Today, it's considered a classic of blue-eyed soul, R&B tunes sung by white artists, despite being primarily the realm of black artists. Blue-eyed soul is a little controversial of a topic. Some argue that it's a form of cultural appropriation, but few would argue that Dusty Springfield was a leader in the genre. Her soul orientation was so convincing that early in her career, U.S. listeners who had only heard her music on radio or records sometimes assumed she was black. Unfortunately, that initial failure and the aftershock wasn't kind to Dusty Springfield, and it was even a lot harder on Mary O'Brien. Alcoholism and drug addiction affected her career. She was hospitalized several times for self-harm by cutting herself. But a new generation ultimately discovered Dusty in Memphis in the 1980s, when electronic dance duo Pet Shop Boys invited her to collaborate on their song What Have I Done to Deserve This? Springfield recorded a duet with B.J. Thomas, As Long as We Got Each Other, which became the opening theme song for the U.S. sitcom Growing Pains. More audiences found her in the 1990s when Quentin Tarantino insisted on using Son of a Preacher Man in a key scene of the movie Pulp Fiction. In March of 1999, Springfield was scheduled to go to Buckingham Palace, where Queen Elizabeth was going to award her the title of Officer of the Order of the British Empire for her services to music. Dusty would have circled the date on her calendar in her trademark black eyeliner, but Mary had different priorities by that point, in particular fighting her advanced stage breast cancer. Because of her illness, officials of Queen Elizabeth gave permission for the medal to be picked up earlier and presented to Dusty in her hospital room with a small group of friends surrounding her and tending, which is good for her, because on the day she was originally slated to go to the palace, Mary O'Brien passed away. 11 days later, she was admitted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, largely due to this album.
Well, all right, that's very somber.
And most of these songs were associated and written in the Brill Building.
Knew you were going to bring that up.
I know.
I immediately started looking at who wrote the songs.
You just had to look at that part, didn't you?
I did.
I did too, though. Fair enough.
What? Now that I know it, I can't unknow it.
Right.
Yeah.
And you see Brill, and you're like, holy shit, really?
Yeah, and now you know what that means.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't even walk past the Brillo pads in Target without stopping.
It had nothing to do with Frank Sinatra for once.
Carole King, Hal David, Burt Bacharach.
Dusty dead, though. She was like the first Amy Winehouse. That
Yes.
little British girl. You know, alcohol, drugs, la-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, I actually had that thought too. She was sort of like the proto Amy Winehouse, the self-destructive
she was-
behavior, the soul music, the...
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was my first thought as soon as I saw it. It's like, damn, she even had the look down.
Yeah.
Like, you know?
Right, even the beehive hairdo even.
Say, who's copying who here? Amy Winehouse.
But honestly, what a voice. I would look at I would look at a picture of Dusty Springfield and I would say that is... I can't believe that this woman makes any music that I'm even remotely interested in. And then you actually listen and hear her voice. It is phenomenal voice.
It's a great album. I really enjoyed listening to that one.
I mean, it's like any album that's got its weak points, right?
Yeah.
Windmills of Your Mind is absolute garbage. Nobody should ever be singing that song ever.
The first three tracks, though,
Sting
were very good.
did a version of that song.
Did he?
Yes.
Well, Sting did a lot of things.
It was a song that was written for the movie A Thomas Crown Affair.
Yep.
So it was recorded by another artist, and when they did the remake of the movie, Sting did the song for that movie.
It was actually nominated for an Oscar because of that association with the movie. In '69, after the album came out, they started putting together singles to ship out. And Windmills of Your Mind was a B-side on one of the 45s. They actually had a whole stack of 45s that had Windmills of Your Mind listed as the A-side with a label on them talking about saying that, not calling it the Academy Award-winning Windmills of Your Mind. They basically had drivers like ready to go to roll these 45s out to record stores if it happened to win. But of course it didn't win the Oscar because it's a piece of shit song.
What
Yeah,
a
it's pretty
collector's
weak.
item.
Yeah. The lyrics to that song, I actually wrote down, it sounds like somebody who's writing a song trying to describe what it's like to be high, but who has never actually been high before.
Probably one of the oboists.
Yeah. But yeah,
Frank
song is...
kept those guys on a short leash.
That song is right up there with Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen in terms of songs I hope to never hear ever again.
I wish people would stop covering that.
There were two people who were allowed to sing that song. One of them was Leonard Cohen, the other one's Jeff Buckley. They're both dead, which means if you're alive, you're not allowed to sing that song.
Yeah. I like Cohen's version better than Buckley's, although Buckley's was tolerable at least, but fuck.
Yep.
Yeah, just please no more.
Absolutely.
Stop the madness.
I really don't have anything else. I mean, she's singing other people's songs. It was part of the paradigm. It was part of how music was produced then. These were they pulled the songs from Other songwriters, Brill Building, you got yourself a great singer, put her in a studio. You know, you had musicians that recorded it wherever, did it right, and she came in and sang on top of it. And an amazing voice. And like Dave, you pointed out, you look at her and you hear the voice. It
doesn't connect.
It doesn't connect. It doesn't.
It's like when you first look at Adele and you hear her talk, she sounds like Liza Doolittle. Hello, Governor Crocky! But then she opens her mouth and sings, and she sounds beautiful.
Yes.
Two more interesting just notes of trivia. So first of all, I mentioned the As Long As You Got Each Other, the theme from Growing Pains. Speaking of sitcoms, for several years, Dusty Springfield was in a relationship with the singer Norma Tanega, whose song You're Dead was the theme song for both the movie and the sitcom What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. Other interesting little bit of trivia, Dusty Springfield is largely responsible for Led Zeppelin because while they were recording this album, she went to the heads of Atlantic Records and said, hey, I know this bass player, John Paul Jones. He's got a new band. You should really check them out and sign them. And without even hearing a demo based on her recommendation alone, they gave Zeppelin a $200,000 advance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did not know that. That is really cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
But even though he's not a musician, you mentioned Growing Pains. Can we put Kirk Cameron on that rocket?
Oh, Kurt, yeah.
Kirk gets a
Right on the
bird's
tip.
eye view of the
I mean,
bird's
he doesn't
eye
have to
view.
go on. He doesn't have to go on the rocket. He could be on one of the lawn chairs underneath.
I think he deserves a lawn chair
Yeah.
right there. We'll just duct tape his ass.
Just want to put that out there. Make
No,
sure
no.
that, if we mention Growing Pains, we can't go past it without.
All
All
right.
right.
So up against the next album, which is that Sam Elliott or whatever his name is.
Elliott Smith.
Right, that guy. He's dead too.
He is.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Is he British?
He's not.
No.
He is not British.
Born
not.
in
Okay.
Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay, right. Not British, obviously. Well, maybe. Maybe he had British parents. Are they alive?
It doesn't matter.
Yes.
No, it doesn't.
Fine. Whatever, man. Jeez. So hard.
Elliott Smith. Of all the private dicks out there, and this dame comes through my door. She's begging me to prove her innocence. A Mr. Smith is dead. She's a suspect, and she swears it was a suicide, and that he stabbed himself in the chest twice. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. And believe me, after hearing that, I expected that little guy with the rumpled trench coat to be on her heels. But the money was good, and my coffee habit ain't cheap. I agreed to look. $200 a day, plus expenses. I'll look at anything. This Elliott Smith certainly was unstable. And in a time when it was frowned upon, dismissed, and sadly ignored. But I'm not here to judge. No, actually, that's what we do here on this show. Never mind. But I just wanted to see if this dame is possibly innocent. Smith fit the profile with drug abuse, childhood trauma, chasing antidepressants with alcohol, threatening suicide, and even throwing himself off a cliff. The music he makes is melancholy, has some seething anger, a scoop of anxiety, a large dose of self-doubt, and a splash of isolation. The perfect concoction for a suicidal person. And even naming an album after that Kierkegaard book. I have that book. Keeps the dining room table well balanced. Better than the dame that hired me, wanting me to believe her story. For a cat that understands things like bad drug concoctions and gravity, I think he's sharper than this. Sorry for the pun. But I took the dame's dough. I bought this cat's album and really liked this guy, and he's got some very good tunes. So I called the dame back to my place and let her know what my conclusions were. And my conclusions were inconclusive. But my friend in his rumpled trench coat had some questions for her. Smith was disturbed and trying to clean himself up. Maybe he slipped on that knife or fell off his wagon. Not for me to say. But all I could tell her is, get yourself the kind of attorney that defends citrus or people that promote Jell-O. But I can't do any more for you.
That's very, very concise.
And that's all I got.
The bit about the man in the rumpled trench coat, yes, absolutely. Because Elliot was a whore. Elliot Page, right? Yeah, well, I don't have much to say. I did listen to the album. It felt like the guy who sat alone in the back of the class and wrote like a bunch of sad fucking poetry all through high school, and then like got an acoustic guitar and learned 6 chords. Yeah, that fucking kid.
Wait, isn't that your story?
Shut your fucking mouth. Because yes, it is. But I didn't kill myself, wanker.
Yeah. Well, 3 of the songs from this album were used in Good Will Hunting. Yes. One of the songs that didn't make the album was put into the movie and was Oscar nominated.
Oh dear.
And he even played it at the Academy Awards. It's not bad. He's got that whispery, dark voice. But he fit the bill. I mean, he struggled with drugs and alcohol and, oh my God, caffeine.
Who doesn't?
And here's the thing.
Was he Mormon?
I don't know. But his real name is Stephen Paul Smith. He changed his name to Elliot so that no one would confuse him with Steve Smith,
or Sam
the drummer
Elliott
for Journey.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. I would have confused him with the drummer for Journey right off. Yeah.
If you're playing acoustic guitar and singing, it's a dead ringer.
It is.
Exactly.
Or in his case, just ringer who's dead, I guess.
Yes.
Just something dead.
And the whole, suicide, couple things. The suicide note was actually signed Elliot. I think it was misspelled.
Yeah, he misspelled his name.
And if you're writing a suicide note, wouldn't you use your real name?
Maybe he was struggling with MPD, Just nothing, multiple personality disorder.
Or if he was writing the suicide note, noting that ultimately his fans were going to hear it.
Possible, yeah, man.
That is.
And maybe he didn't want people to confuse him with Sam Elliott, so,
Now, what I will say is some of those tunes do sound like some of the slower songs that Stone Temple Pilots were doing back at that time, and even some of the slower Foo Fighters. But of course, Foo Fighters were more contemporary with him. The chord use and the way he was singing it.
I had a slightly different analogy. To me, a lot of this was like Pixies Unplugged. Yeah, I heard like a lot of Frank Black just like moping around on the guitar and not really following traditional structures. And
that album gave me a fucking twitch in my left eye. I'm serious. Made my right nut fucking itch a little bit too.
So,
I found the whole suicide thing just the most interesting because it seemed the most preposterous.
It is an interesting story, but it's an interesting story. I mean, we're here talking about and judging the albums, and it's an interesting story that actually has no bearing on the album one way or the other. So I debated how much to talk about it coming into this, honestly, because of that. But I mean, it's certainly the most interesting aspect because I'm with Scott. The album itself, doing sort of reading up on this, I was expecting this massive work of staggering genius. And then I listened to it and I went, really? This is what everybody was losing their shit over?
This was not something I would have put in the top 500.
I have
good,
trouble with that.
And I've now listened to it, but could have gone the rest of my life without hearing it.
I really had a lot of trouble figuring out why the fuck it's in the top 500 because it just doesn't need to be there. There's so much other better stuff that could have been there.
So here's my theory, and it's kind of not too far off what we were talking about earlier with George Harrison being an ex-Beatle. My sort of cynical view on this is, if he doesn't go through the drugs and the depression and the suicide, this album never becomes as big as it is.
True.
Now, I will say his former band had a great name, Heat Miser.
Yep, from the old Frosty the Snowman specials.
No, it's the
Frosty the Crackman was a jolly happy soul. He was made of drugs, but the kids know he had 2 dicks made out of coal. There must have been some magic in that old crack pipe they found, because when they placed it in his mouth, he began to pass it around. Frosty the Crack Man used to deal to all the kids.
The Year Without Santa Claus is where Heat Miser comes from.
Oh, okay, fine. Jeez, whatever. God,
I don't think we can let it pass that Scott just completely improvised that, which is fantastic. Not only fantastic, more fantastic than anything on Elliott Smith's album.
Oh, cold-blooded.
Much better than what I just read about. that there's going to be yet another Christmas album coming out this year by none other than Steve Perry.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I thought you were going to say it was some pre-death collaboration between Elliott Smith and Kurt Cobain.
I think we've got nothing more on any of these albums.
We will deliberate.
Yes,
I need
take a break.
time. I need time.
Yes, you do. All right, we're going to take a short little break, and we'll be back.
Hey everybody, this is Dave, and I just want to take a quick minute to thank you all for listening. We have a lot of fun making this show for you, and we hope you're enjoying what you hear. And if you are enjoying the show, why not take a minute to subscribe? All you have to do is just search for Musical Shenanigans on your favorite podcast app. We're on all of them, like iHeartRadio, Amazon, Apple, Spotify. Once you find us, you just tap that little subscribe button. You never ever have to worry about missing an episode again. It'll be right there on your phone when it comes out. Also, we'd love it if you tell your friends about us. In fact, if you're with a friend right now, next time they get up to leave the room, you know what? Just grab their phone and subscribe them as well. I'm sure they'll thank you for it. And as always, we always love your feedback. You can always drop us a review on your favorite podcast platform, or you can tweet at us at m_shenanigan. Please let us know what you think. We'd love to hear it. All right, that's enough shameless plugging. Again, thank you for listening, and now back to the show.
And we're back. And, the albums were Sam Smith, Either Or, and
Elliott Smith.
Whatever. And Dusty Springfield, Dusty in Memphis, and I'm going to give the win to Dusty because fucking Dusty, man.
Yeah,
Come on. She had the pipes, she had the talent. Sam was just he shouldn't have been on that list in my opinion. I hope that's not a huge upset.
No, it is not actually, because Dusty came in at number 83 and Elliott Smith came in at 216.
Oh, fuck that guy. No.
Yeah.
He came in higher than George Harrison.
He came in higher than George Harrison. Yep.
The fuck is that about? No, those people at Rolling Stone are crack-addled. Christ.
I would agree with you.
Put the pipe down, boys, and back away. It's time to get off the junk, kids.
All right, so you ready to hear what's coming up next?
Says the author of Frosty the Crackman.
All right, so next time in the first round will be the band Gang of Four with the album Entertainment against, and I guess it's time to give this guy some airtime, Drake with If You're Reading This, It's Too Late.
Oh, fuck.
In the second round, Miles Davis with Bitches Brew.
Nice.
Against
Radiohead, OK Computer.
And you know what the interesting thing about that matchup is, I don't know how familiar, are you guys familiar with Bitches Brew?
Yeah.
Because that's like when Miles got into like his later career experimental electric jazz stuff. It's not quite as, in my view anyway, solid as his earlier.
Oh, no, it's much funkier, much weirder.
Yeah.
It's when he hit his jazz fusion stage, like Spinal Tap did after the Puppet Show.
Right. Exactly. I'm looking forward to listening to that album again. Fucking A. Miles Davis, sweet.
Yes, so thank you for listening, everybody. Just to recap where we landed today, we had All Things Must Pass by George Harrison taking the lead over The Diary of Alicia Keys, and Dusty in Memphis by Dusty Springfield winning out over Either Or by Elliott Smith. We will be back once again. Before we go, hit us up on Twitter. What do you think? Do you agree with this? Do you disagree with us? Do you have an opinion at all? Let us know. It's at m_shenanigan on Twitter. We'd love to hear from you.
And before we go, request to put somebody else on the rocket, Eric Clapton.
Eric, your shit is on the rocket.
Totally reasonable.
Yes.
Yeah, very, very, very reasonable.
Eric Clapton has a whole long history of being a giant asshole in a lot of respects.
Oh,
he does.
I hate to say it because as a guitar player, I had two main influences as I was learning to play, David Gilmour from Pink Floyd and Eric Clapton. I still like the guy's guitar playing, but he's on a personal level, he's a douche.
And with that, we will catch you all next time.
From one dead bitch to another.
Praise Satan.
Thank you all very much.
Bye.
Bye.